Hello, Brendan. Sorry about that. That was.
I don't know where your head came out of there. Yeah, exactly. But do you know what, Ali? I was going to say when we started off tonight, before I had a bit of mini drama in the last hour and a half or so, I was saying, let's hope that we have no glitches or anything on tonight's show. But here I am to the last minute, guys. There's no electricity in my building, except for however this building is wired, because in a number of the blocks around here, there is no electricity. Yet in this particular building, the third floor has electricity. So the daughter of the administrator kindly let me into the third floor, into this apartment. So I'm in a different place with maybe not as great lighting as I'd normally have for this show. Usually, it's a very professional setup that we have, but we have to make do with what we've got. But anyway, thankfully the show does go on, and to the very kind Colombians in this building for letting me take over, hijack this bedroom for an hour or so. Ollie, how's your week been anyway? I hope less drama than I've had in the last hour and a half.
Well, I've got workmen in again to do a little work, and so I'm back into the familiar feeling of having everything covered in a slight level of dust. I'm not quite sure if it's concrete dust or where it's from, but yeah, everything's covered in dust again for the next couple of weeks, I think. But yeah, there we go.
Well, gota per gota, as they say here, drop by drop, little by little, you'll get there, and the house will be ready for a party, I guess, soon enough. Ollie, yeah.
Well, let's see. I suppose I couldn't I? I mean, who knows where we are with restrictions these days? Anyway, shall we plow on?
Let's plow on, indeed. And guys, you heard it here first on Bogotá Nights. A party in Ollie's place in the coming weeks. We'll let you know. But anyway, as most of you will probably know, I hope you do anyway, that we had Colombian Independence Day on Tuesday. While 71, or is it 70? Colombian media doesn't seem to agree on the number, but some number anyway of Colombian athletes are flying the country's flag at the Tokyo Olympics, which got underway, of course, this week, the official opening ceremony tomorrow, but the games have already begun. So in celebration of that, on tonight's Bogotá Nights, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show, we're going all patriotic in a Colombian context, of course. For born-and-bred Colombians watching, what makes you proud to be from here? For the blow-ins, that's Ollie and me and the rest of you perhaps, would you become a Colombian citizen if the option were available to you? What aspects of Colombia would you happily assume? I think most of us have no issue donning the national football shirt, but does your love for the country run deeper? The live comment facility is open right now for business, so do get your messages into us, whether you're a fist-pumping patriot, a lapsed nationalist, or something in between. If you're watching this recorded, guys, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet, the handle being at Bogotá Post, everybody's favorite English language newspaper in Colombia, indeed in Latin America. And the hashtag as ever, Bogotá Nights. This show is all about viewer interaction after all, guys, so do get your messages in and you can comment on my lovely new background today. But Viva la Patria is to come. First up, though, it's our run through the week's main news stories. Ollie, is the paro Nacional, in terms of mass protest, now pretty much on hold? Because by all accounts, the demonstrations on the 20th of July on Independence Day were small in number, weren't they? Or did I miss something?
Yeah, look, it depends who you are. I mean, I've seen people on Twitter trumpeting this as, a great sort of step forward towards the revolution. But let's be honest about it. There were 5,500 people up at Héroes. And then from there, the next biggest site, 500 at Americas, another 400 at Usme, and then you get really small. I mean, you get down to these tiny numbers. There's kind of 20 people at Banderas, 40 people here, 100 in Suba. I mean, really scattered, no central point, no central aim. Again, it's this theme that we've been talking about so much recently. There's kind of a howl of anger. There's a general dissatisfaction with the way things are going. But what there isn't is that thing that galvanized it at the end of April, start of May, where people could say, okay, reforma tributaria, that's become the focus. I don't think it was the focus. I think people were just irritated anyway with life, and that became the focus. But there's nothing at the moment that can have that kind of spearhead effect. And because of that, there's not people marching to a central point. There's not anything sort of bringing everything together. There's not a central point. I do quite like the way that Eroes is turning into a kind of Portland style, almost like a little alternative town, well, an alternative village every day that there's a protest. It's got a nice atmosphere. There's something very positive, I think, about what's going on at Eroes. And it's worth pointing out that that's the one site that has pretty consistently not seen violence.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I remember a few weeks ago passing through there as well. And as you said, it's got that kind of ambience now and an atmosphere that, it's like, look, we're not happy with certain things. We'll kind of continue this, like vigil in a sense, you could say. And then, its own little community kicking off there. But in terms of the leaders of, the reputed leaders of this in any case, I was reading that there's kind of the goal now, or the plan, is to move it more so into the political arena. Of course, we've got the new installment of the Congress and Senate, of course, now that they're new leaders for what will be Duque's last year as president. And that now would seem politically, anyway, in terms of what's going to go on in that regard, that's where the main action might be seen in terms of any significant changes, if we see any significant changes before Duque leaves Casa de Nariño.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, isn't it? The really big unanswered question is, can all of this anger and negative feeling, and desire for change, can that be translated into a positive sort of force, whether or not you agree with it or not? I mean, can it become, at the moment it's a very negative force, again, whether you agree or don't agree with the protesters. At the moment they're protesting and they're saying they don't like something. Can they turn it into something that they do like? Can something, can we get a message here that's not, we don't like this? Can we get it, we want this? That'll be the big question, I think. Whether or not, whether a candidate hijacks it or whether they put their own candidate forward, could go one of two ways.
Yeah, by the way, fair to say, Ollie, as well, that both sides now, we'll say kind of the Centro Democratico conservative side and the centre left and further left, they're kind of, there's no real unity on either side at the moment, it would appear. So we could have a very interesting presidential election next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we've all been very much aware that it's going to be a crackerjack election, and that could really change the way Colombia does things, or it could not. I mean, it's just so hard to call. And I think we won't really have an idea until the turn of the year, exactly who's running, what they're going to do, things like that.
Yeah, Ollie Humpty Dumpty Pritchard here. He's sitting on that wall. Well, we did see some changes, so I believe. Now, I haven't, thankfully, been engaged with the police in the last week or so, but you've been out and about getting pictures of them. Not stalking them, I have to say, but they've got a new uniform. Now, I thought it was meant to be blue, but it doesn't seem very blue to me from the pictures you sent me.
No, it's very dark blue. It is very dark blue. It doesn't look blue at all. I mean, it's not a great step away from dark green to dark blue, is it? You're just taking a bit of yellow out. It's got a QR code in, which is really weird. There are very few places in the world where there's QR codes on the police. So Colombia appears to be trendsetter. There are a few, there's kind of police vehicles in various places in the US where you can sort of scan the barcode on a police vehicle to check it's operating legally, things like that. But I think this is the first time we've seen a country put it on as standard on the uniform for everybody. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Also, I do wonder how they're going to hold up. I think they're setting themselves up a little bit for a fall in that, officers are going to lean against the wall or whatever and scuff the QR code, and then people are going to scan it and say, "Oh, look, it's not working. It's corruption." So, yeah, I don't really know where to
it
go
does
on
seem
that.
a little bit, well, out there. I'll put it that way. To have the QR codes on the police officers, but the whole idea about like moving away from this green military style color. Like, they haven't really done that. As I said, I haven't seen it in real life, but from the pictures you sent me, it's kind of, well, that still kind of looks military to me.
Yeah, and they've got their little epaulets and stuff still, haven't they? But I mean, actually, what I would say is you wouldn't necessarily notice the difference, from far away and whatnot. But when you're up close, I think it does. It does feel different. I did think to myself, he looks he looks really more like a security guard, if I'm honest. But yeah, he doesn't look quite so military. He was actually resolving a dispute between a taxi and a private car who had collided. So I was quite looking forward to scanning him. But he looked very busy, and I thought, you can't really go interrupting the police when they're in the middle of something. Okay. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
But I was when you had said blue to me, I was thinking like on Garda Síochána, the Irish police force blue, which is very blue, but it's not that at all.
Like that?
Yeah, exactly, something like that. But the one thing, the trousers now, not that I'm a fashionista or anything, far from it, of course. Anybody who knows me will know that. But I've always felt the trousers that they wear, like the ordinary kind of run-of-the-mill police officers, yeah, they look like something that you're heading off to a construction site or whatever. I don't know. So yeah, if they jazz up the dress code a little bit, they might look kind of smarter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want your police to dress for? Do you want them to be smart and sort of well presented? Do you want them to be intimidating? Do you want them to be welcoming? Do you want them to be able to do lots of things? In terms of kind of, do you want resistant clothing that's going to be able to handle running about and jumping over things? And I mean, I'm not being sarcastic when I say these things. This is a very real point, because in very many ways, you can't really have a police uniform that looks intimidating and friendly at the same time. And you've really got to make that decision. What do we want from our police force? How do we want them to kind of conduct themselves? I don't think that changing the uniform is going to change people's attitudes overnight. I think it probably is a step in the right direction. And, look, we can all bleat on about how much, there is a big problem, with showing the officer's name and police number. In that, it's all very nice telling them they have to do that. But they've got an awful, terrible habit of just putting tape over the top of it. There's not really much you can do about that, illegal though it is. Something else I think that's flown under the radar is body cams, which are going to be built into a lot of the police uniforms. Look, they're moving towards pretty standardized international policing requirements. I'd say we should cautiously say that it's good that they're at least saying they'll do that. Let's see how it plays out in real life. So yeah. I'm guardedly optimistic.
Yeah, I guess the cynic would say, I mean, if you were going to change anything, the easiest change with less hassle is change the uniform. That really doesn't require too much effort. A little bit of extra clothing to be bought or whatever, new clothing to be bought. But yeah, it is a step. And actually on the same day, I saw a headline in Blue Radio before we came on where like there's been, 36 separate recommendations or whatever from different community groups of what they want the police and what direction they want them to move towards. So I guess we'll see. The Rome wasn't built in a day and all that, so maybe it is the step in the right direction. Of course, guys, we are going to be talking in the second half of the show about Colombian patriotism and what makes you, if you're Colombian, proud to be from this country, or if you're a foreigner living here, what aspects of Colombian kind of patriotism, culture, things like that are you proud of? And of course, the police, well, they always have they've always had the Colombian flag on their uniforms, so very much representative of Colombia. Are you proud of the police force here? I'd take a guess that many people watching or listening are not.
Actually, you might be surprised now. I mean, the army are certainly incredibly polarizing. I always thought they were widely disliked, but they come out quite well in polls, surprisingly.
Well, and when you're like, I think Uribe brought all of that in when you're traveling around over land here, and when you cross checkpoints of military or just military standing on the streets, on the country roads, they'll always give the thumbs up. And yeah, I'm amazed how many people will always beep and give them the thumbs up as well in return. So yeah,
I know we're slightly off topic here, but it's a relatively slow news week, and this is interesting. Have you ever seen the military clowns?
The military clowns? Well, I mean, the smart answer would be I've seen all of them. Yeah, they're all clowns. But
no, I shit you not. I've been on a few buses where the military have come on to kind of check cedulars. This is out in the sticks. Places like Arauca or Norte de Santander or Guaviare and that. But they have a habit of stopping, and they'll kind of go through and check people's cedulars, but they often have a clown to amuse the children. There'll just be a guy, walking up with a big red nose, and you just think, brilliant. And I've always wondered if that's another police officer or whether that's, they've hired a clown. And I think it is, like you say, it's a public relations thing. I think they're just, being nice to the kids and it kind of, but yeah, very surreal. Very surreal.
I was going to say, were you smoking something that day? Perhaps I've never seen the clowns. I have to be careful here because I might fall off my chair in laughter. But I was telling you before I came on, this chair that I've been given in this impromptu studio for me tonight, the chair is a bit dodgy, so I do have to be very careful. I can't make any sudden movements, or I will come collapsing down. But from the police, and remember, guys, as I said, we are going to be talking about Colombian patriotism, so do send us your messages or on anything else that you want to talk about. But you mentioned slow news. One thing, and I'm throwing this upon you, but just to mention it,
oh God.
I saw it on a headline that the Constitutional Court here paved the way for euthanasia under certain circumstances. It just came in as a headline. I know I'm throwing it at you, but
whoa. Colombia's had euthanasia for quite a long time.
But then what's this news? It was like a headline news on Caracol.
I don't know. I haven't seen the headline news. I don't know what you're referring to. But what I do know is Colombia's actually incredibly progressive on euthanasia. I would guess, again, I haven't seen the news, I'm going to guess that they've maybe extended the rules on euthanasia. They've maybe put in a new requirement or something like that. What I would say is there was actually a relatively high-profile euthanasia case that was resolved about 2 months ago. Somebody wanted to kill themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, actually, so much so, my mother has considered in the possibility of coming here if she's in the position where she thinks she might have to kill herself, just because it's actually more advanced than in the UK.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So anyway, as I said, for throwing that one on you, but I just saw the headline on Caracol before I came back to a house without electricity and things like that, so I couldn't do any further digging on it. Vaccines, Ollie, it kind of seems as if we may have hit, particularly in the urban centres, a bit of a brick wall. Is that like people who want the vaccine have got it, and going by the age groups and the different stages they had, we've had Claudia Lopez come out and saying, well, just open it up now and let whoever wants to get their vaccine go and get it. And I think that's what we're moving towards for next month. All over the country, from what I believe.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's been stuff all over the place. People have been posting on Twitter, posting on Facebook, seeing WhatsApp statuses. People just saying, look, I went to do a vaccine. There was nobody there. I was in the Centro Comercial. There was nobody there. It's, lots of pictures of empty seats. Yeah, it does seem like it's slowing down. And we've just received a whole bunch of more vaccines. Another 10 million have been confirmed that are going to arrive. I think Sorry, another 6 million. So 3.5 million Johnson and Johnson, 2.5 million Moderna, I believe. That's from the United States as part of that, campaign. So in terms of vaccine availability, yeah, very, very positive. In terms of vaccine take-up, a bit more of a mixed story, I think.
Yeah, if straw poll, I guess, off the top of my head, but in the barrio here, for every 7 I meet, maybe 3 are saying they're not going to get the vaccine.
What would be interesting there? I mean, it strikes me as part of the reason people aren't getting vaccinated at the moment isn't because they're particularly anti-vax as such, but more that they just feel like they don't really have the time, they can't be bothered, and they're not that worried. I suspect what will be interesting is when employers, legally or not, please don't post in a comment saying, oh, well, it's legal for them to do that. We know how the world works here. If employers start saying, look, if you don't get, no vaccine, no job, that's going to be difficult and very hard to control here.
Yeah, well, look, anyone can go on my blog and check out where I'm coming from on this. I haven't got the vaccine yet, and I'm in no panic. But there are forces at work that if they want the world to take this vaccine, and if you don't get it, it looks like things are going to get extremely difficult. I mean, there was an interesting chat on Spectator TV. The competition for us, of course, Ollie, but they don't get as many viewers as we do. But just today with the former chief medical officer, I think, in the UK. But this idea, and whoever was debating with him, that in the UK, how the government have said in September, you won't be able to get into a nightclub without the vaccine, as kind of using that as the stick to get these younger people who are more reluctant to get the vaccine to get it, and that it's just being insincere completely, that they're not saying that, oh, you really need it for health reasons. It's more that they just want to get to that magical herd immunity or whatever.
I'd say it's more of a carrot than a stick. I mean, a stick would be, we're going to fine you if you're not, or imprison you if you're not, if you're not vaccinated. The carrot is you get to go to a nice nightclub or a crappy nightclub. There's lots of those in the UK too.
It's halfway between a stick and a carrot then, because it's kind of, it's putting people in an awkward situation if they really didn't want to get it. Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, this is often a very polarized thing. This often gets very quickly bogged down into kind of a really reductive anti-vax. I mean, sort of debate. I think one of the things you have to remember is whenever you get a large number of people, I work in a university that has, a few thousand employees. Now, I can guarantee there's going to be at least 1 or 2 people in there that have, for example, anaphylactic shock problems. They may have conditions with things like haemophilia. There's lots of different people that could well have reasons. Even putting aside the philosophical reasons, but actually just medical reasons that say, I can't have the vaccine. Now, what do? Do we start saying, well, you can't come back and teach classes ever again because, for a reason that's not your fault, it's a medical condition. We certainly wouldn't be allowed to say to people, well, I'm sorry that you're in a wheelchair, but you're not allowed to work for us. There are big questions here, I think. And I don't think it's necessarily helpful to start always going into kind of, philosophical standpoints. Is this about freedom? Is it the freedom of the masses to be given protection against the freedom of the individual to make their own decision? Yeah, okay, very nice. We've all done kind of politics 101 classes, as the Americans would say. But yeah, there's some really serious questions, I think, here about the type, these people that won't be able to receive vaccine. And then, of course, Brendan, some people in practical terms, look, I can imagine somebody saying, well, it's, 2 hours on a bus for me to get to the nearest vaccine point, and then it's a queue up and it's a wait, and I can't afford to take time off work and yada, yada, yada. Now, that's not an easy position either for somebody to be in.
Yeah, and then when there is that doubt about it, you hear these stories like you had that UK Navy ship in the Indian Ocean where everybody had got their quota of vaccines, fully vaccinated, and you had an outbreak of coronavirus there, of COVID. So you've all these other issues that are playing into it where people are kind of going, well, but like if I haven't had COVID.
Oh yes, no, but hang on. This is one of the really genuinely worrying things about this is, yeah, I think what's being lost in all of this, COVID doesn't make you immune. It makes you unlikely to go to hospital. You could absolutely spread it. If I was to go back into university, now I've been I've had the jab. It will be fully effective as of now. If I turned up and I could potentially be infecting my students or passing it from a student on to somebody else in the rest of my life, just that I'm lucky enough not to get the full effects of it. So that is quite a dangerous thing, especially when we're looking at this Delta variant, which seems much more transmissible, and there seems to be no attempt to stop it at the moment. But anyway, we shall see.
Yeah, look at it. We're going down the rabbit hole as well, because one thing that does annoy me, I will just say, is sometimes the kind of moral superiority that comes from some people who kind of go, oh, well, I've got my vaccine and I've done better than you for humanity and mankind.
I'm going to get a tattoo of a halo around my mark on my skin. I've got one of them little Colombian marks now.
Yeah, well, your place is assured in heaven, Ollie. It's there waiting for you. Well done. No, anyway, look, let's move on. And to be honest, kind of moving but to something very sad, Ollie. And I know these are things that are very close to your heart as somebody who is a cyclist. But a couple of years ago, when Egan Bernal won the Tour de France and he was back in Zipaquirá, there were pictures of this then 11-year-old crying because this was his hero and he was cycling as well, and he was going to emulate Egan Bernal and go on to hopefully win the Tour de France and Giro d'Italia and what have you. And tragically killed on Sunday, being hit by a truck when he was out cycling with his uncle, 13 years of age. Very, very sad, really. I mean, and look, and I know this happens a lot here, but 13-year-old.
No, let me hold it in here. I mean, this happens all over the world. Let's not. I mean, look, there is nowhere in the world where there's any sort of justice if you're a cyclist who gets. I know the car lobby will always come on and they'll go, oh yeah, but what about cyclists running a red light? Well, they don't kill people. You know, they kill one person every decade in a city the size of Bogotá. It's just not a serious problem. Cars, trucks, vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, week after week after week, this happens. I mean, we talk about the deaths from COVID. Deaths from road traffic accidents are also incredibly high, but it becomes so normalized that we never talk about it. And like you say, I don't. It's very easy to come back later and say, oh, well, it was a terrible accident. It could have all been avoided. Well, I'll tell you one way it could have been avoided. That truck could not have been on the road to endanger the child. You could equally say the child could not have been out cycling, but is that a world we want to live in, where we're just caging children away because we can't trust people to be responsible drivers? Driving any vehicle around, it's a responsibility. It's a serious responsibility. I don't think people genuinely realize what a dangerous position, what a dangerous thing they're actually doing. Driving a car is by far and away the most dangerous thing that most people will do on a regular basis in their lives. And release it without charge.
Yeah, exactly. The guy, the truck driver. Yeah, like basically on a daily basis. How many times am I brought to the point of rage with people breaking the pedestrian lights or not respecting the pedestrian lights? Because I know sometimes the lights can be confusing. They give a green light to the car, but they're also green for the person to cross when you're at an intersection or whatever, which should be cleared up really, but they just don't respect the pedestrians. Like, no, I'm in my car. You get out of my way.
I mean, look, what we've heard here, he's beeping them. He's, saying, get out of the road. He makes a 13-year-old child, for Christ's sake, nervous enough that he loses balance and goes under. And what's his reaction? He gets out and he berates them for being in the wrong place, which, by the way, legally they're allowed to be there. Look, it's shocking.
Yeah, it is very sad. And, may he rest in peace. Julian Esteban Gomez, just 13, and 27 cyclists killed in Cundinamarca alone so far this year, just in the department of Cundinamarca. Anyway, Ollie, we'll move on to matters of sport, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, and of course we are going to be talking about kind of Colombian patriotism and what makes you proud to be Colombian, what makes you proud to be in Colombia as a foreigner resident here, or even just passing through. We want to hear your comments on that. Alejo Christochancho, what's up, fellas? I guess sup, fellas. Well, give us your thoughts. Are you a Colombian patriot? Are you a flag waving, card carrying member of all that's good about Colombia? Let us know what you think is good about Colombia and what makes you proud to be from Colombia. But sport first, I mentioned the Olympics. We've got 70-71. As I said, I think Maria Camila Osario, the tennis player from Cucuta, who did pretty well at Wimbledon, I think she's the 71st. But she's kind of a wild card that was only included in the last few days. So that's why people were saying 70. But I believe 71 athletes anyway out there. 70-71.
70 is what I have from the Olympic Organization of Colombia.
Okay.
That's their tweet. They don't have that young lady on there. But like you say, it wouldn't surprise me if she had moved on.
Yeah. But just reading, Colombia historically 5 gold medals and only one man, 3 women, because Pujan,
double gold.
Yeah, double gold.
Marianita Pujan.
Yeah.
Who's going for her third.
Third gold medal. So going by that, historically, the women have a better chance for Colombia of bringing back the top medals. Of course, the one guy who won the gold medal the last time was weightlifting, wasn't it? Oscar
Renteria.
Yeah. So I don't know, like where is it the kind of same again? The usual suspects. We're looking at Mariana Pujan in the BMX, and then Catherine. Is this really? Because it's going to be a strange one, because obviously the preparation has been so interrupted, and even being there now with all the different protocols, like maybe the old dog for the long road kind of athlete is the one that's going to star here, because they can maybe adapt to it better.
God, I'd say this could well be a bit of a crapshoot. So we've got our aging heroes, Catherine, the leaping lady. Mm-hmm. We've got Renteria's not returning. We've got Marianita Pujan still going strong in BMX, a little bit past her best, but one last throw of the dice. We've seen cyclists pull off amazing things in recent weeks with the return of the Manx missile Mark Cavendish, so that'll be interesting. The cycling team looks quite strong. I've not looked at the routes, but the road race team, they've got the full 6. Nairo Quintana, obviously physically incredibly talented. Rigoberto Urán, not to be overlooked, a fine single-day racer. Daniel Martinez, he's looked good this year. Esteban Chavez could be an interesting wild card. Higuita, solid rider. So we've got some really, some really good chances there, I think.
Is that tomorrow as well? The cycling's tomorrow, is it? That's like one of the early events. I think it is.
Thought the road race was on Saturday. I thought the time trial was Saturday and the road race was Sunday. But anyway, yeah.
But maybe it's
of course
Friday in Japan, and then yeah, with the time difference, I guess.
Yeah. Of course,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, yeah. Well, it makes sense now. But will you be glued to any? I guess the cycling you will be.
Certainly. Pop down to a panaderia and watch it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Quick one in sport though as well. Saw a headline today, speculation that James could be going back to Spain, but not back to Carlo Ancelotti, to Sevilla. Apparently, he's been linked to Sevilla in a possible move. He is in Florida at the moment with Everton, preparing for the Florida Cup, which was meant to be Everton Millos, which is going ahead. Millonarios, of course, here from Bogotá, the finest team in Colombia. And in the other half, it was Inter Milan, Arsenal. There's two semi-finals and then a final. But both Arsenal and Inter Milan have pulled out due to COVID. So I guess that's a final now, Millonarios and Everton on Sunday. But there you go. But James to Sevilla, we shall see.
I would say James is about the least Rafa Benitez player I can imagine.
Yeah, it's not the other one. The Brazilian star as well, Richarlison is also, well, he's been linked to go with Ancelotti to Real Madrid, which would probably make sense too. So Liverpool could be losing, as in the blue half of Liverpool losing two world stars there. Anyway, guys, it's been, well, alive and kicking on the comments here, Ollie. I don't know where to start. Where do I start? Anyway.
Good thing you went and borrowed that connection.
Well, this is the greatness. Very friendly and helpful Colombians. I mean, where else would you get it? They've put me away. There's actually probably a stronger internet connection here than what I have in my own apartment. So maybe I should do the show from here every week. Just get a better chair that I'm sitting on. I'm afraid to make any sudden movement whatsoever. I'll come collapsing down here.
Well, look.
Let's stop moving around in your chair there. You're showing off. Colombian patriotism, Ollie. We talked about this, and I was kind of going, how do we approach this? But you had a very particular line that you wanted to go on it, and you also had a very interesting article in the Bogotá Post to tie in with Independence Day, which was Tuesday, the 20th of July. So you kind of see this in various angles, how it manifests itself, Colombian patriotism.
Yeah, I mean, and I suspect American listeners, viewers, might see this very differently, but I've always been slightly uncomfortable with overt displays of patriotism. You know, since I was very young, the English flag particularly, but the British flag also, it's always had a bit of a connotation back home, that it's a little bit racist. It's very exclusionary. There's always this thing, English patriotism especially, I think, moves very quickly from "I'm proud of my country" and very quickly, thank you, and very quickly into this kind of nationalism where it goes, oh yeah, and we hate the Irish, the Germans, the Argentinians, etc. And it really quickly gets into that, which I find, I mean, I think partly that's because I like the fact that in Colombia there's an Independence Day, there's a Freedom Day, there's a day when, it's a very positive thing to celebrate, self-determination. And of course, we never really have that in England. There's no great moment where we've thrown off the Viking yoke or whatever. In fact, it's completely the opposite. There's lots of countries all around the world that, by revolution or referendum, have broken away from the British Empire. So it's a really weird thing to see for me.
Yeah, well, I wrote a story back in 2012, my first full year in this country, and after having experienced Independence Day in Chile, which is in September, the previous year in 2011, and for me they are kind of weird as well, because Ireland falls between two stools, because obviously I'm from the Republic of Ireland, which clearly is a republic, but the island of Ireland, when our freedom fighters were fighting for freedom from British rule, it was for the whole island, but of course for historic reasons the north of Ireland didn't, and that's still part of the United Kingdom. So we don't celebrate an Independence Day, we've got St. Patrick's Day, which is an idea to kind of just celebrate Irishness, really. Obviously, historically, traditionally, it's a Catholic, a Christian festival to celebrate the coming of Christianity to Ireland. But now it's just about celebrating all things kind of green in Ireland and all that kind of stuff. But an Independence Day per se. And also, I guess the Irish default position, I think I can say this, is more to be kind of critical of our country and self-deprecating. Maybe not too like uberly nationalistic and kind of going, Ireland's great. We're always kind of going, no, we'll mess this up if it's in sport, or like, they're idiots. Whereas Angela, who's usually listening in from Bogotá, like she had said last week, Colombians are very critical, but not to outsiders. As in, they won't fight amongst. Yeah, go on.
And I tend to find as well. Here is Angela.
Right, exactly.
But I tend to find I find it very odd how I do hear when I hear Colombians complaining about Colombia, they're almost always complaining about the state or the government, not the country. And they really do seem to be able to draw a line. Like in England, I think, we criticize. I think when people criticize Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn, they say, oh, us British people, what idiots we are to vote for this moron. Whereas I don't tend to get that so much in Colombia.
The thing is, like for me, because I don't think you'd ever hear someone back home, just obviously I can only really relate to Ireland growing up there, but like the idea of, this is the greatest country in the world, isn't it? And like so many times you'll hear that from very, like, and this isn't a criticism, but just very enthusiastic and proud Colombians kind of going, yeah, like, I know why you're here. I know why you've decided to come here. Okay, they might say from a guy's perspective, oh, you're here for the women, but also they go, because it's a beautiful country and we've got everything. It's, 5 countries in one, snow-capped mountains down to beaches and all that kind of stuff. Beautiful fruit, all kind of fruits that you want.
We've got more birds than anybody.
Well, birds.
I always want to say to them, what do you wake up in the morning? Do you kind of open your eyes and go, thank God we've got so many birds in this country? I mean, I'm sure Chris Bell must do that. But,
I was going to say that.
But, I wonder how much the ordinary person on the street, but I've heard that so many times. Oh, we're number 2 in frogs. And I was like, well, why don't we push on, why don't we try and discover new frogs, or try and tempt some of the Brazilian frogs to come and live in the Colombian Amazon? Like, I find that really bizarre.
Yeah, well, it's just, as I said, because the Irish tend to be quite cynical or whatever, this kind of idea that, this is the greatest country, the best in the world. And as you said, that's, like, it's interesting because when it does come to politics or whatever, then people will be quite critical and maybe how things are run, and you talk about corruption, etc., etc. But then there is this kind of standard line of, but apart from that, best country in the world.
Yeah. And another thing I find really interesting is this idea of the perception of Colombia, and I think that's kind of a new thing. And I've heard Colombians talk about this before, that it kind of changed in the Uribe years a lot. This idea that, being Colombian used to be quite a shameful thing. It used to be a kind of like, oh yeah, kidnappings and murders and, Pablo Escobar and cocaine and all that kind of thing. And obviously that still is the perception in many places of Colombia abroad. And I think there's a kind of defensiveness that comes from that, when you want to say, yeah, look, we aren't all like that, and we don't need to feel ashamed. As they shouldn't. I mean, I'm reading Angela's comment here. When she says, when I lived abroad, I can imagine that. I can imagine being, well, in fact, I can't really, I guess, but I can see where it comes from, in that it must be terrible to be in a foreign country and constantly be, asked if you're a drug dealer. Oh, have you got any coke? Do you know Pablo Escobar? I can imagine that would be really grating, and you'd want to say, actually, my country is pretty nice, in the main part.
Yeah, well, like, it's interesting, as you said, because Angela is saying that now she has very few reasons to feel proud and celebrate the country.
No, no, no.
Like,
Hang on, not the country Colombia. I mean, I think she's talking in general for anyone, which I would agree with. I think it's
right.
rather nonsensical to say. I've never been proud of being. I didn't choose to be British. It just happens to fall out into the world from, in a bit of the world that was called Britain. And yeah, I don't feel proud. I mean, I quite like Britain in some ways, and I don't like it in others. Colombia is very different. I chose to be here. I'd say I have a great reason to feel proud of Colombia, and that's why I've chosen to be here. But that's not necessarily true. Yeah.
Well, I was kind of going to mention the sporting elements to this as well, but Angela, as our number one contributor tonight, as ever, doesn't like talking about sports. You just write in and tell us that, Angela, when we're talking about sports. Say, guys, just cut it out, stop it, move on to something more interesting for me. But no, another kind of now a comparison rather than a contrast with Ireland, and you probably don't have this as a Brit, because you had an empire there for a couple of 100 years or whatever, and you're kind of you're confident about yourselves. Whereas in Ireland, this idea of what are the international press or people abroad saying about us for X, Y, and Z, and I notice Colombia is kind of similar with that. Whenever anything happens, it's like, what are the international papers saying about Colombia on this? Even when there is a football match and like something happens, they'll always go to another reporter and kind of go, okay, what are they saying in Argentina now that we and you're kind of going, well, why does that matter? But I can relate to that as being from Ireland, because we are always kind of, we're concerned about the international perception or what others think outside. I guess it's when you are the kind of small dog, you always kind of, hey, look at me, but
that's always the strange thing, though, isn't it? I mean, Ireland is a small country. It's half the population of Bogotá, but Colombia is not by any means it's not a particularly massive country, but it's certainly not small. I mean, 50 million people places it pretty high up. Yeah, I find that. Yeah. I've always found that bizarre. Like when they kind of go, "What's going on with James? What's going on with Juan Cuadrado over in Europe?" And I kind of think, I can't imagine that. Very few English players do play abroad. But even when they did, I don't think anyone ever went, what's Jermaine Pennant up to? What's going on with Mikey Owen at Real Madrid? It wasn't really a big story.
Well, I guess it's historically being like a second-class, third-class country, so you've never really been talked about internationally. And also, like we mentioned when we were doing our planning for the show, this idea that like a generation, so about 20 years is like a human year for a country. So that kind of puts Colombia, and of course we've had many versions of Colombia, from Gran Colombia, so when they had Venezuela, Ecuador, Panama, and then of course they lost all of those bit by bit. So what Colombia's maybe like a late adolescent or early 20s, thereabouts. If you're using that little thing.
By your counting, if you're saying 20, then there'll be 10, and that's very much exactly. That's what I'd go. Again, depending on what you call Colombia, but yeah, I mean, I'd actually say that's a really important part of it, Brendan. Like, and again, this is something I really notice with England that perhaps you won't notice. Irish culture stretches back, hundreds of years. Just talking about the Celts, before we get into, pre-Celtic people. And Britain's certainly got a very long culture, and Scotland and Wales, longer still. And then you've got English culture, which, it's big, but it hasn't really been fully defined in a way that the Scottish and the Welsh, and I think the Irish, you tell me. I think it's a very firmed up idea, and part of that is we're not English. That's quite an important part, I think, of all of those cultures. That there's an oppositional definition in some respects, which of course England never had to deal with because it was always the dominant power. But certainly, I mean, when I was young, few people would call themselves English. They'd normally call themselves British, and that's completely gone about face. And we don't really know what it means to be English. Is it inclusive? Does it include Black and Asian people, or does it not? And I think Colombia's at a very similar position. I generally find, certainly the flag I find is very inclusive. I see various ethnic minorities, especially indigenous pre-Columbian groups. They very commonly, I think, reject being Colombian. But I don't think Colombians reject them as being part of Colombia, which I find interesting.
Yeah, well, like, there's all this debate about the iconoclasm that we've seen during the protests, things like that, and the toppling of statues, even calls to rename. I don't know really how much legs this group or whatever, but to rename the country, because of course it's named after Christopher Columbus. But you could say, of course, the original iconoclasts were the conquistadores, no? Because they came in and completely did away with all the traditions of the indigenous. So, you're starting a new culture practically from scratch with the new republic.
I would say calling that iconoclasm would be almost like saying, oh, well, there was a little bit of naughtiness when you're describing a war. I mean, look, that was pure and simple. They just destroyed everything. We're not talking about a few statues. We're talking about absolute annihilation. And
I was being nice, Ali.
No, but you're completely right. It's a really bizarre thing to be saying, oh, well, you shouldn't go around pulling down these statues. And you go, why not? Your ancestors did did something far worse hundreds of years ago. It's a bit like, it's always irritated me when people criticize Brazil for chopping down the rainforest from Europe. And I kind of think, well, we chop down our forests to build boats and sail around the world and take over a lot of countries who we now say, oh, yeah, no, we don't want you chopping down your forests to be rich. Now, that doesn't mean I necessarily want Brazil to go down, chopping down the rainforest. I think that would be disastrous. But for Christ's sake, to be, it's not a great look, is it, to say, with this very heavy-handed colonialist attitude, oh, well, you can't do what we did.
Because you're living off the legacy of it. I mean, you're in that position because of what you did in the past, and now it's like, oh no, you can't do that now anymore. The rules have changed, which of course they have, and scientific advancements, things like that, and that we're hoping that you don't need to cut down the Amazon to reach kind of first world high income nation status and things like that. That we have other ways of doing things, but of course those countries, and particularly the BRIC nations, will always make that argument. Well, we've got to use the resources at our disposal as we see fit. But that's kind of getting off topic. I guess. But I was going to say, like I mentioned at the start, kind of in the introduction at the very start of the show, about like loving a country, and I remember a fellow Englishman of yours, Malcolm Dees, who's like the Colombianized and is actually a Colombian citizen now, and was awarded the Order of Boyacá. Is that it? I think that's what they call it.
That is an award. I don't know if that's the one he received.
Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, like basically a Colombian knighthood in a sense. And in an interview that I had with him a couple of years back, when I did the podcast with Samana, and I said, like, oh, there's, what's the love that you have, or the love affair with Colombia? And he kind of gave me the a virtual slap on the wrist and said, well, it's not a love affair. One doesn't love a country. One loves dogs and cats and kittens and things like that. It did get me thinking, though, like, there are things to love. Well, love is maybe a strong word. I don't think Brendan Corrigan tends to love too many things, but there's many things to admire about this country, from just even from a nature's perspective. Like, it is a physically beautiful country and to be very proud of. Although, of course, then you would like to keep it that way, its physical beauty.
Well, I mean, I always think, I quite like Bogotá. Now, whether or not I would feel patriotic towards Colombia, that's a kind of more difficult question, I think, for me to answer. I certainly feel very Bogotano, I'd say, and I would never call myself a Rolo or a Cachaco, but I'd be relatively happy to call myself a Bogotano. I pay my taxes. I contribute to society here. I take part in local elections. I fulfill what's what's expected of me. I'm as active as you would expect me to be, I think, in the in certainly in my sector. Now, with Colombia, that's a very different thing. I'd have to think. That's a very different kind of culturally very different situation. But yeah, I mean, I like Bogotá life. Now, here's a question, Brendan: would you consider taking Colombian nationality?
I'd have to see what the benefits of it are. Like, I'd take a very practical approach to it. It wouldn't be for like kind of this real love affair thing. I'll give a confessional.
You have no romance in your soul.
Yeah, that's fair enough point. By the way, Angela, thanks for that. The Cruise the Budget Cat, which I will probably never get. But anyway, thanks for giving us the name of that. I don't know, like sometimes, when there's a big game on, I'll get myself into trouble for saying this. But like, maybe it's because I'm always an underdog. I tend to like to shout for the underdog. If you're watching a game and it's all like Colombia, like sometimes I find it less. I find myself, it's more difficult for me to get enthusiastic. Whereas, for example, when Millonarios play, and even though my love, in inverted commas, for Millonarios is very superficial, nominally a fan of theirs, it's more, I kind of enjoy supporting them more just because I'll always have somebody who won't be supporting them in the same tienda or wherever you're watching it. I don't know, I like that.
I'm sure you'll disagree with this, but you're very much a contrarian, I think, at heart.
Well, perhaps. Who would have thunk it?
But yeah, no, I know kind of. I know what you're sort of talking about. I disagree, though. I think I would definitely consider it, and I'm not too far off the point. As of next year, I've got potentially the possibility to start applying, and it is something I've thought about, partly just to vote, really, just to vote for president.
Yeah, well, of course, rub salt into the wounds, Ollie. I mean, I've had a love-hate relationship with La Cancilleria de Colombia, trying to get visas and whatnot and things like that, and now I'm further away than ever from even just residency. No, and it's not. Look, that's not bad blood on my part. I don't know. I've just taken a different view to nationalism. Full stop. I mean, in my 20s, I was very nationalistic, and now I kind of think, well, look, I like it for sport and things like that, but so I can see more problems with it sometimes than solutions. But I mean, it's the way we divide the world. What can I do about it? I'm not going to change that now.
Yeah, no, it's all non. I mean, I've got very little in the way of family left in England, for example. They almost exclusively live, in the Celtic fringe in Yorkshire. So yeah, I mean, what is there about it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm just saying that our producer shut up here on the screen. I think he wants us to go. I thought it was 10 o'clock we're meant to finish, yeah? So the citizenship, I'm not saying I would never get it. And of course, it would be a great help if Colombia does turn out. Like, if I'm still here, I mean, I'm almost here 10 years now, and I would have never thought that. I mean, who knows? I could still be here in 2031. Still doing Bogotá Nights and still living off visas. No, I hope not. Like, if I'm going to be here for a long time, well, then obviously it would make sense to get citizenship. But would I be doing it out of a great love for the institutions more so? As I said, for the country and things about it, and I have friends here and the way of life for me right now, there's those things I like. But yeah, in terms of the institutions and singing the national anthem, which I actually like the national anthem. But
it's quite a nice start, I have to say.
Well, and that's probably a good way to finish, because of course we are finishing the show. We should finish with the national anthem. Everybody stand, guys. We got to leave it at that. Oye nocho, we'll be back, and Ollie's going to leave us with
with a rousing rendition.
Yeah.
All right. Ciao, guys.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.